All right. Hello, I'm your host, Faith Jacobs. Welcome back to Coffee Break. And today I have the greatest of pleasure to speak to a fellow indie author, Abigail Rae. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, before we begin, would you start us off by telling the audience a bit about yourself and what you've written? And then following that, we'll dive right into my questions.
Okay, my name's Abigail, and I'm a musician, a composer, and music novelist from Iowa. And I've done a lot of traveling, so I'm not just in Iowa, but for now I'm kind of stuck here for a while. But uh, yeah, that's pretty much so far.
All right, so let's dive right in then and begin with why you chose the subject of Felix Mendelssohn for your latest novel and what led you to write about this particular composer, which was published this past February.
Okay, so for this question, my first ever book was actually published in 2021,
Oh
and it
wow!
was a full biography on Mendelssohn. And so that was the first book I ever did, and I was became interested in Mendelssohn's music while attending music courses at a community college in Mason City. And my capstone project was actually on Bach.
Hmm.
And when analyzing his music for the project, we also had to do the history of Bach, um, and within that history, of course, is it talks a lot about how Mendelssohn popularized Bach's music in the 19th century, and kind of my research and interest went from there. And after finishing my college courses, I did more research on my own and um, for my book and published the book. I mean, it took quite a little while, and um, and then after doing my first book, I was still working on other projects, but um, I moved abroad twice to first to Vienna, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and then I moved to Leipzig. And towards the end of living in Leipzig and then traveling a short trip to Scotland, I decided to rework my Mendelssohn project since I kind of did more traveling and went to the actual places. And I did a lot more research this time around because there was a lot of things I missed because the first book I did was, I mean, the first book I did. I mean, I feel like it's still a good book and it still has its value, but I just wanted to research the things I missed, and because there's a lot of books I missed and or information, and thus kind of led to this project in volume. So the book I finished this past February was about a year after deciding to revisit the project.
Oh, wow, that's incredible, and I'm always fascinated by people who have been able to see Vienna. I am currently writing about a musician
Mm-hmm.
from that part of the world as well myself, so I hopes and dreams one day to see it for sure. Um, my second question then is, what can you tell me about the book? I'm going to butcher this. I'm so sorry. Olivero, and
Yep.
how that project came about for you.
So my book Olivero is a shorter fiction book that I finished while I was in Leipzig, and it is roughly based on the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, but
Ooh.
it's set in the 1800s.
Oh, that's fun.
And there's lots of references to the myth. Like, I mean, it's roughly based on it. It's not as mythical, but it's taking the love story and some certain themes, and there's a lot of underlining things that allude to the myth. So it's kind of like the first names of my characters have the first letter of the names as Orpheus and Eurydice. So
Mm.
Olivero starts with an O, and for Eurydice, I made the girl's name Emelina. So
Ah.
kind of doing a lot of different things like that. And except for, I mean, in the myth, Eurydice gets killed and he has to rescue her. In my book, instead of dying, she gets kidnapped and Olivero has to rescue her. So it's a little different. It's still not realistic, but it's a little more like 1800s realistic,
That's
but still not.
exciting. I like that.
Um, and one of the main things with my fiction books is I compose music for my books.
Oh.
So with the Mendelssohn book, there's pieces of music listed by Mendelssohn and his contemporaries and what inspired him. So, and you research the music while listening or while reading. So the music's found on YouTube, and so with the Mendelssohn book, it's his music, but with my fiction books, I compose my own music. So it's kind of like writing music, not for a movie, but for a book. So a little different, but uh, kind of that sort of thing.
No, that's exciting, and that's quite unique too, to take your talent for composing and then to sort of like craft your own soundtrack for that. I really admire that. So what does or what did like a day of like research look like for you? What was the process of finding, purchasing, and understanding the historical era that Felix Mendelssohn was part of when you were doing all this research about your first novel and then subsequently the one that you've just released in February?
Hmm. So my research, primarily concerning the Mendelssohn book, because my fiction books, I mean, I don't really have to. It's a whole different thing, not really research, but for the Mendelssohn and other like history books, the Mendelssohn, it can get all over the place for research, and but my main place of finding information is Internet Archive, because 90% of the books that I needed, or if I looked online, they would be in Internet Archive somewhere in both English and German. But so 90% of the books, and there's a lot of them, are in Internet Archive. But there are other books and certain things, certain little blobs of information, like kind of scattered everywhere. So, and I'll kind of get into that too, why some of it gets tedious. With when I talk about some of the challenges, but there are so many books on Mendelssohn, so it is hard to write a biography on Mendelssohn. And but what I'm doing is I'm organizing the information and getting as much as I can because there's different perspectives, and I'm just basically organizing each perspective and everything I can find and putting it in story form since my book is in the novel form. And so I write many notes and I watch and on the other side of things, I watch a lot of history videos that don't necessarily have to do with Mendelssohn, but just in general the times of when he lived and kind of what life was like back then.
Yeah, because he was, if I'm not mistaken, was he living during what was he alive during the post Napoleonic period, or was he sort of creating music like during Napoleon's like campaigns?
It would have been so his sister was actually born during the Napoleon era, so she was born in Fanny was born in 1805. So and Felix was young. I mean, the Napoleon era. I don't know specifically when the Napoleon era like ended. I don't remember the date, but Felix was young, and his father was a banker. And there's a lot of the first chapter of my book has actually a lot about the Napoleon, what Napoleon was doing in Hamburg, and because the Mendelssohn children, their dad Abraham had a bank, and there's a lot of very interesting things about that because he was basically in the business and was on the Prussian side of things while the French were trying to take it over, and their dad was running a bank with his brother, so obviously there's some political things the dad got involved with back then, and so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's all very War and Peace ish a bit if you're familiar with you know the miniseries and the
Mm,
novel as well. You mentioned that so I'm gonna ask this question and then I'll ask this other one. Sometimes documents can be lost in the archival process for these figures in history, and I am wondering what was the hardest part, as you kind of mentioned, like of the researching process. You know, because preservation was different, before our time, and now
mhm.
we're scrambling to preserve anything, but it's it was a much different process back then.
So like what the challenges are currently for researching?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Leading up to or currently, like like wherever you are on the timeline of things, like how difficult is it sometimes tracing down those obscure like documents that
Um
sometimes slip
okay,
into history?
for my research concerning Mendelssohn, the hardest part is when I want to discover something that is obscure. And when I say like discover, I'm not necessarily discovering anything new. I might more for myself. Maybe I'm discovering something new, but not usually because most stuff is pretty much I'm taking pretty much what's already there. But some things are pretty obscure, and there's about three main things that gave me trouble, or not trouble, but were hard. Firstly, was finding a full version of because when Felix was young, he did a poem, uh, like a Grecian themed poem called Paphlys about his brother,
Hmm.
and it was just like a kid poem he wrote, but it's actually like really sophisticated for an 11-year-old kid, and he's putting it in like Grecian meter and stuff. And a lot of biographies talk about this poem. And so I was reading about it, and but none of the biographies have the poem in it. And so then I was like, I want to find the actual poem. Like, was it published at all? I want to find the poem. And I did some research, and there is a published version from like the 1960s or something. Someone published a version. It's only in German, so there's no English version. But I couldn't find because usually with these old books, I could find a scan on Internet Archive or Google, but I couldn't find anything. And so I did more research, and there was a YouTube video of Mendelssohn, this one Mendelssohn museum in Berlin, kind of this girl talking about the poem, not talking, giving some lines on the poem, but kind of talking about it. And then there was a link to the website of their museum in Germany, and so I made some contacts through their emails and stuff, and I asked them, "Is there a PDF of this poem?" And they got back to me and sent me a PDF of the published version.
Oh wow.
So there is a full published version. So what I did is, I've been learning German for a couple of years. I'm not at all like I'm not fluent, but I know enough. Like I translated the poem to English, and it's in my book.
That's so
And
cool.
uh, but I used partially Google Translate, but I know enough German to know when the translate is like off or not right, because I don't know enough German to not use Translate,
Right.
but I know enough to know when it's like not really going right. So that was
Yeah.
one challenge. Um, the other two challenges, the second challenge was in the later chapter of my book, Felix wrote music for the Dürer Festival, which is the artist Albert Dürer. Lived for like 400, I can't remember how many, 1500s, but there was an anniversary of his death, and Felix was appointed to write music for the festival. And I couldn't find the music, and I want to. So when I include music to research, read along with my book, I wanted to include that
Right.
piece, but I couldn't find it,
Hmm.
and not on YouTube, not nothing, no recordings. So, but there were scores. There is like a score of the music. So I was gonna try to put it into MuseScore and all that, but I couldn't get the full thing because the full score was really expensive and it's like outrageous. But then I did more research and made a contact to this professor at a university who actually did hosted a special concert, kind of reviving that piece.
Oh
And
wow.
I asked him, "Is there any recordings of this that you did like 15 years ago?" It was some concert. And he's like, "Yeah, I got recordings," and he emailed them to me. And I was like, "Can I make a YouTube video out of this so people can at least research it on find?" Because the easiest way I think is to find stuff on YouTube for music. And so he said the recordings were pretty much public domain, and you can make a video. So there's about an hour video of the whole thing. And so it's like it's challenging, but it that stuff kind of came together. It was really weird. And then the third aspects of challenge is basically what I physically can't do. Uh, like I do a lot of traveling, but there's still places I haven't been, and it's like I can only do so much.
Right.
And a lot of the main information for Mendelssohn is in the Bolidian Library. I hope I'm saying it right. In the UK, I think it's in Oxford. I can't remember where it's at, but there's a lot of sketches and letters, and it's really kind of inaccessible online on there because
Yeah.
I've emailed them a couple times, and they don't have a lot of scans of stuff. You have to like physically go there. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I've run into that too myself as a researcher. I definitely understand where you're coming from.
yeah. I mean, most of the stuff from the the Mendelssohn stuff from the Boledian library is there's a huge chunk of stuff that's already in other biographies and other books, and that's just online out there. So it's just probably, I mean, there's it just depends on how much is really there. I'm sure there's stuff I haven't seen that's there, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel that there's some stuff in Berlin related to Constanza and the whole Mozart family that I
Hmm.
go, why is no, not Berlin, Brussels. I'm like, why is it there, and why can't I see this?
Yeah.
um, so my next question to you is, how does your take on Felix differ from any other biographies out there about him the readers might stumble across, either fictional or non-fictional?
So firstly, my biography is different because it's in novel form, and the music to research while reading. That's kind of the style I do. It's kind of my niche, and so that's unique. And it puts the reader into the life and times, and it does get theatrical at times. I mean, it's still a novel, so I mean, I get as accurate. I put everything that I read in it and what fits and stuff. But there's times where I read something that happened in the 1800s, and I'm like, I kind of want to add this in. I mean, it didn't specifically say this in the Mendelssohn letters, but this kind of stuff was happening then, so I might kind of do a little creative, add stuff in, and just I don't know, just how life was like back then. And
Dramatizations is always helpful. I won't lie.
mhm. And kind of, and then it's like I kind of compare and contrast the different perspectives, and kind of an example of doing that is um there's a lot of memoirs. His friends, Felix's friends, made a lot of memoirs, and one of the things is like Felix became friends with the musicologist A.B. Marx, and Felix and him were good friends when Felix was younger. But Felix's other friend, De Vriend, who was a singer who wrote the memoirs, had a whole different perspective that uh, Marx was very controlling and Felix was kind of naive. So I kind of portray in the book that Felix was kind of naive to that,
Hmm.
to Marx being kind of controlling. Um, but later in a future volume, I mean, they have a argument and stuff, and Marx and Felix, and that's very interesting. But it's just all the different perspectives of what was happening, because I think in the letters Felix would write about Marx, but not. But then De Vriend was writing different stuff about Marx and just the different relationships.
It's incredible all the stuff you find whenever you're going through. It almost feels like, maybe it's just me because I have so many letters from the Mozarts on my
Hmm.
shelf. Doesn't it feel like when you're going through these classical composers that you're almost reading their diary in
Yeah,
in some form or fashion? It's like these were letters, but now it just feels like you've got this massive sort of like self-published autobiographical memoir of like their lives from their perspective and the perspective of like those around them.
yeah.
Um, and it kind of makes it fascinating just to sort of like peer into that moment in time. Um, my next question to you is: we all hit low moments in our writing journeys, and I know this deeply. How do you personally deal with the ebbs and flows in an industry that lately has not been so kind to indie authors, particularly with things like I feel unnecessary boycotts and shifts in readership?
I think for low moments for me, I mean, boycotts, I mean, affect me in a way. I try to like find different ways around it, but it doesn't affect me at the same time because I'm not selling a ton of books or anything. Most of the time when I sell books, it's usually at like I have a book booth at like a vendor fair. I mean, I sell a few online, um, but then like with the boycotts and stuff, like Amazon, of course. I mean, it's hard, and but then like I try to publish like on Barnes and Noble or this other site. Like I tried to do different sites just to see how it goes. So I tried different things, and I think mostly for my low moments come from like book reviews. Like I mean, a lot of authors tell me don't read your book reviews, or I've a couple authors say that. I mean, or at least one. I don't remember how many, but I've just heard it every once in a while. But I kind of read my reviews and just to see. I get too curious. Uh, but like, basically, with my Mendelssohn book, I haven't had any trouble with, most of that's had good reviews, and mostly my friends' family buy the book, and it's, those kind of reviews, and, um, so, I mean, not too much trouble, but I had one book that, I mean, I won't get into too many details, because it's just kind of, I unpublished the book because it was just kind of too hard. Part of it was because the book was just outdated, or it was a book on the 19th century guitarist Carcassi,
Mm.
and I took a little too many creative liberties with historical stuff because there's just not a lot on him. But I did find interesting things that at least would put him out there, because I couldn't find too many books, like actual books. There was magazines, there was different things, but like books, and some of them had different information and stuff, so I just tried to put together what I could, then just where he was living and stuff. But um the book got misunderstood, and someone else found more information about a year after I published my book, and
Uh,
it just got kind of muddled, and my book was just it was out of date, because it was just like the stuff they other people were finding, or just more because he's just an ongoing research,
right,
so
right. Like there
it's
are.
just kind of hard. So I was just like, you know what, I mean, the book's so, like, I mean, reading wise, story wise, I mean, it's like, story wise it's fine, but just like information wise it's out of date. So I was just like, you know what, and with the reviews and not kind of being kind of a little harsh, and I was just kind of like, I'm just gonna unpublish it, maybe go back to it, revise it, and better it some other day.
That makes sense. Yeah, sometimes like I feel you there. I have a novel myself that is going to be focusing on the most one of a very obscure figure, and I feel the same thing. It's like there's nothing on this person,
Hmm.
and sometimes I feel like as a writer you have to make up things. Sometimes you have to take creative liberties sometimes, because the information that's there is he lived and then he died. And,
Yeah.
you know, and you kind of have to make up the in between sometimes. And nobody deserves to be in this. We don't tolerate bullies on this podcast, and we don't tolerate bullies to fellow indie authors. So kindly see your way out. um, but let's see. Let's dive into a book you mentioned earlier. I think it's called Memoirs of Vienna. You my question now seems ill phrased because I can see what drew you to the city, but beyond Mendelssohn, maybe was there anything else that personally drew you to want to see Vienna?
So basically, my Memoirs of Vienna is about my first time living abroad, and I chose to go to Vienna for a few reasons. First of all, because many composers and artists live there, and like Mendelssohn didn't he visited there but didn't necessarily live there, so I wasn't really going there for the Mendelssohn stuff.
Right.
This was just my first time abroad, and like Mozart lived there, of course, and Beethoven and so many others. But the reason of also moving abroad was that I felt like I needed to get out, because I moved in 2022 and lived there for 3 months, but the idea began in 2020, and I was just starting to do research for my Mendelssohn book, and I was finishing my music classes at community college, so that was getting done. Then doing my own research for my first book, and working at a grocery store. But the main reason of wanting to get out was because in summer of 2020 my mother passed away,
Oh.
and take I was thinking about what I want to do, and kind of going all over the place, and uh so I was thinking about going to like another university just to take more music classes, and I was kind of set on that. But then as I was doing Mendelssohn research, I mean mostly the Mendelssohn research, with the Mendelssohn research comes research with other composers like Beethoven and Ignaz Moscheles and Carl Maria von Weber, and kind of with each of them they had death in their lives. Not necessarily like, because Mendelssohn didn't really have death in his life till like later, or significant death. I mean, he had some, but I mean for like Beethoven and stuff, it's kind of researching about that, and then being like, what do I want to do with my life? And then I was just like, what if I just moved away? abroad to Vienna and studied music in Vienna, just kind of something outlandish. And then so it kind of just came about like random, like I was already interested in all this stuff, but then it was just like, what if I just go do it and see what happens? Um and then I kind of remember it took like 2 years of planning. I was learning German, and I was preparing because I wanted to like study music at a conservatory or something. And but I did eventually move there for 3 months. The visas didn't work out, and music university didn't work out because of the visa. And then I didn't have enough German because I struggle with learning German. I've been learning for years, but it's really hard. and and then and part of it was I didn't have a formal, like for classical guitar, I didn't have a formal classical guitar teacher before, so I mean that kind of doesn't help either. But I did take private guitar lessons while I was there. So, I mean, I was still learning music, taking some sort of class, and so I lived there for about 3 months.
Wow. I mean, that is, I can't imagine, like, I mean, how exciting on one hand, but how different it must have been, especially having struggles, and I can't imagine if there were any financial, difficulties and that sort of thing. That's bold and that's incredible, and I empathize with loss. Loss led me as well uh, to to jump into the world of composers. I
Hmm.
feel like we find so much comfort through them because it's like, oh, they went through it too, um
Yeah.
and so I empathize and understand with you in that way.
Yeah, because like I think in a later question, we kind of go with it, like, I feel like I like Mendelssohn because I can relate with him, but it's also like, I like Beethoven a lot because just some of the stuff he went through, it's just kind of like, oh.
Yeah, I feel the same. um so I'm gonna ask this question next. What do you hope people will take away, particularly from your series of volumes on Mendelssohn? You mentioned that you're taking a bit of a different angle with your research, but what is your unique angle that you haven't seen in other novels or biopics or history, like move if there are movies about Mendelssohn, like what makes yours like stand out, would you say?
I would say like I want readers to take away a unique perspective. There's not really any movie on Mendelssohn that I've found. I wish there was. And there's some biopics and stuff, like not biopic, just documentaries, but not any like biopics or anything. But uh, I just kind of want the reader to feel like they're there. So like when they're researching the music, they're listening to the music Mendelssohn was working on, like the story of it, while they're reading about it. And the book also contains instances of musical science, theory, literature, and Felix was involved in so many perspectives of music. So it's like when he was 12, on his way to Goethe's house, um, him and his teacher and the group they were in, they stopped in kind of by Wittenberg and stuff, and they met Chladni. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, uh, who was like a scientist, but he was like a musical scientist. He made like these Chladni plates where it's like basically sound has movement,
Mm.
and very interesting scientific stuff. I mean, so there's that, and then there's the literature stuff. So like it's just music in a lot of different aspects. Like, and that's just learning. Like, I don't know. That's why I like Mendelssohn, is because when you learn about Mendelssohn, you learn so much about stuff in general.
That's that's true. It is amazing how many composers really touched history, and the kinds of people that they interacted with. You almost can't believe it was like you met him, or you met her, or just some of the people that you just find in your research is such a joy. I think to people like us. And you mentioned this question, so let's jump to it, and then I'll jump to the other one. the other ones. What aspect of Felix Mendelssohn do you feel was relatable to you as an artist, and what about that helped to shape the manner in which you continue writing about him and researching other artists that were around him in his time period?
So I guess the reason I chose him as my main composer of interest is because of the many aspects. Like, I feel there's a lot of aspects I can relate to him. Mostly for him concerning his love of music history and traveling. He loved music history, like Berlioz even kind of commented on that, and which I'll research in my next volume. Uh, so but I'm having much fun right now researching volume 2 with the traveling, because it's really funny because with the travel 200 years ago, some of the same problems still happen today, but in different aspects. Like when Mendelssohn visited Salzburg, where Mozart was born,
Right.
and uh, and he had much trouble. Like when Mendelssohn was there just visiting, he had much trouble with sending letters and his passport. He couldn't, like, he had to go through all these loopholes, and he was really angry in his letters that he couldn't send stuff. And it reminded me of when I was in Germany, because I later moved to Germany, and it was a lot of loopholes to get a visa.
Imagine so. I've heard the process is really really tough. Let's see.
But yeah, it was funny when I read that because I was like, oh, he's got visa problems too. It didn't change.
Nope. Yeah, yeah. Oh, the things that remain the same throughout, that ripple down throughout history. Beyond writing and research, what else do you engage with to keep yourself creatively inclined? Do you have hobbies or other avenues of artistic inclination you explore when you're not drafting novels or researching?
So when I'm not writing books, I'm usually composing, arranging, and recording music. I'm pretty much mostly a musician, or a composer, and I practice my guitar daily, of course. And right now, my main line of work is playing guitar at retirement homes. It's been my favorite job. I do gigs at other places too. So I play Renaissance, Baroque, classical, romantic pieces, and but also a lot of my own compositions. For like actual hobbies outside of work, that don't involve any work for the most part, is I like to paint sometimes, and reading, cooking when I'm in the mood.
Oh, that's cool. Do you do like brush canvas, that kind of stuff? Like what is uh, I have a sister who's an artist, and she's always painting and doing charcoal and like the incredible pieces. And I admire anyone who can do that, because that's none of my none of my forte. I have dyspraxia, so it's harder for me. But is like what is yours? What is the do you do oil paints? Do you do um oh I'm gonna butcher this. Gouache gouache, it's
Oh, yeah, I do mostly like just acrylic, or
acrylics.
I do love, my favorite is oil paints, but it's just when I move around and I usually tend to get rid of my paints,
Uh,
and so I just haven't bought any more oil paints. But my painting is like off and on. It's not nothing professional. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll make mini Monets and sell them at vendor shows, like just little cute, if they turn out good. Like some of them turn out good, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should keep that and stuff. And but then other paintings, it's really just for fun, and it's my painting either turns out decent or not.
that's and it's a good way to de-stress, definitely I admire anyone who has the ability, even just the patience just to paint such masterpieces upon canvases. Um, what first drew you to begin writing? Was there anything in particular, an individual, a creator, or has writing been like a passion of yours, like since like a young age?
So I kind of had to think about this, but the when I remember when I was younger, I would get little mini notebooks and try to write little stories, mostly involving guinea pigs,
Oh,
because of my favorite animal. Uh, but I remember it was kind of funny. Well, not funny because they would always, for some reason, I remember my mom saying like, your stories are always like sad. Like it was always like a sad story. Like the guinea pig getting sold or something. I don't know. I just kind of briefly remember that, and um, but I think the real like thing that started me writing was or interested in the way like having more of a passion for it was in high school. There was a project. It was actually a science class, and we had to write. We were learning about the Earth crust, or I think that's what the subject was. I don't really remember, but I'm guessing that's what it was because we had to write our own version of Journey to the Center of the Earth with using the words, the vocab words or what for the Earth's crust and all that. I think I'm pretty sure it was that subject. So I don't really know what else it would have been, but I just remember having a lot of fun doing that, and I added a lot of funny stuff, and uh, just it was just a very creative assignment, and it was homework, so that was really fun. But my current books kind of came about from my love of music history and music, so really music, but yeah, the Journey to the Center of the Earth, make your own version kind of started it.
I mean, that's a cool assignment. I would take that assignment over trying to understand environmental biology any day. Because I can at least do that. No, that's cool. No, let's see. In all your research about Mendelssohn, was there anything that surprised you about him? Like, were there any connections between him and those that were part of his history that you were unaware of? That was sort of like, oh, I didn't realize that he met so and so who was this big, X, Y, and Z during his era.
So this is another reason I like Mendelssohn and chose him. And I think for studying, if you want a broad, like vast, I don't know, like overview of music history, I think Mendelssohn is the best composer to like just look into because he's essentially connected to almost every major composer of his time and before. Even if he didn't meet them, he still had something to do with them. Like uh like he met major poets, authors, and even royalty in that era. He was one of Queen Victoria's favorite composers,
Hmm.
and if there was a composer he didn't meet, he was still influenced by them. Like he loved Bach. He made him Bach's music popular. He, especially as a kid in my first volume, he was kind of obsessed with Handel. He was very obsessed with Beethoven. He even pretended to be Beethoven by writing mock letters to his sister,
Oh
pretending to be
no!
Beethoven.
Oh,
And
that's funny.
I could probably send it to you. It's pretty cute. Um,
Oh.
and he is actually has a lot to do with Mozart. He liked Mozart's music, and he's kind of compared to Mozart when he's a kid because I mean he was a child prodigy and
Right.
but the thing that was different is his parents didn't want him to be like so much in public.
Hmm.
They kind of wanted him closed off a little bit as a kid, kind of to protect him, and but he was very influenced by Mozart's music and the poet when he went to Goethe's house. The poet Goethe had heard Mozart play when Mozart was 12, I think, or when Mozart was a young. Goethe heard him
Yeah.
and attended his concert, and then Goethe met Mendelssohn when Goethe was like in his 70s, so a lot so later on, and so it was very interesting. That whole scenario was very interesting, and and then Mendelssohn also later on in my next volumes he'll meet Chopin, Schumann, Liszt, Berlioz, and so many others,
Oh, that's gonna be so fun.
and
Just because I don't know if you're familiar with I don't know if you watch anime, but an anime just came out just yesterday called
ooh,
Classic Stars, and it kind of like puts all the composers in like this high school college
oh,
kind of
interesting.
setting. Yeah. Um, So interesting that you mentioned Chopin and Liszt because they're two of the characters, and I'm sitting there going, now I kind of hope that they've got like some anime-fied like Felix Mendelssohn.
Yeah. The other anime I remember there was like Classical Lloyd.
Classical Lloyd.
Did you ever hear about that one?
I have it on DVD. It's on my
Oh
shelf.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think Mendelssohn is in that anime.
Technically, well, I think it's a mix of Felix and the girl that's obsessed with Bach. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
she's either Fanny Mendelssohn or she's Felix because she's so obsessed with Bach.
Yes, yes. I'm vaguely certain that it is, and so I just think it's so interesting. I'll be interested
Yeah.
to see what classic stars. It just came on Crunchyroll. If they like attempt Mendelssohn, if this
That'd
gets
be
like
cool.
another season, yeah, because
Yeah, I haven't seen the Classical Lloyd in a couple years, but I remember when it was like coming out, I was like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever watched, but I like it.
it's like you're just there for the chaos.
Yeah, and I was like, what? What? Because my brother likes anime, and I've seen parts. I don't know a lot of it, but I've seen parts of like the Sailor Moon stuff where they transform or just,
Yeah,
and then the Classical Lloyd like transforms, and I'm like, oh my god.
Oh my gosh, it's what if we took Sailor Moon but made it the composers?
Pretty much.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, well, I still like it.
Yeah, and I have to go back and look and see because I know they do Chopin.
They do Dvorak
They do Dvorak.
as a hippo.
It's just chaos and I'm here for it.
And then Liszt is like some like
a woman?
sexy woman.
But I mean, if you look at Liszt in real life, he really was kind of like a pretty boy.
Yeah.
Mendelssohn met Liszt, right?
Yeah. They kind of didn't like each other. Well, they were okay with each other. They kind of had like for music wise, because Liszt would kind of sight read Felix's piano concerto, and Felix thought that was impressive. Like, I mean, he thought it was impressive, but they still, it's like kind of friendly banter. Like, they would try to duel each other on piano, but like Liszt would win because like Felix was more like kind of, his music's more gentle and like pretty, I guess, and Liszt it's like, I mean, has beautiful music, but like he's more, I mean, he can get more chaotic.
Liszt is like what Beethoven is to Mozart. There's just this passion and this chaos, and and I think oftentimes in the anime fight takes that Japan does, it's always this rival between them, or just this chaotic, like rivalry. No, definitely. It is, in all seriousness, like it is fascinating though. Whenever you think about like these composers who were alive at the same time, you sometimes forget how close history can be to one another. Yeah. When you're, I think when we simplify history, particularly about composers, and we don't really get to deep dive into the connections and everything, it just makes it so much more interesting. When you say something like, "Oh, Mozart met Thomas Jefferson," or Liszt met, Mendelssohn, like, and then you start to think, well, what was that interaction like,
Yeah, there's some funny stuff that, because they still like went to cafes together. Like when Felix was in Paris, that's where he met, or mostly hanged out with Chopin and Liszt. And they had a friend. There was another friend they had, who was a composer. His name was Fernand Hiller, and he's not really as known, but he made a biography on Mendelssohn. But that group was in a cafe in Paris, and there was this other composer named Friedrich Kalkbrenner, and Kalkbrenner was he thought he was kind of uppity and stuff, and Felix had a letter about how they were at, or Hiller kind of talked about how they were at a cafe and were kind of being obnoxious to him and stuff. Just so many funny things.
You just sit there and go, what was that like? It's just coffee with the boys and just making problems. And now, unfortunately, we have come to our last question. Although I thank you for following me on the little tangents. That's fun. That was fun.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun.
If you could go back and give yourself at a very different age one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself? And how do you apply all that you've now gained to the present time with where you are?
So this one's kind of this is one of my longer answers, not like crazy long, but I mean longer.
Right.
So I would probably tell my 19 and 20, because I'm 26 right now, but I would probably tell my 19 or 20-year-old self not to worry, because I was most worried musically when I was in my community college classes. And I mean, it's not like university, it's just community college, just like a step up from high school, but I just took the classes to, learn more theory and stuff. And but I struggled quite a bit with oral skills class, and I just felt there was a perception that if you aren't good with oral skills, it's impractical to be a composer. Like I just had that, I don't know, just that perception from people just around, just the way the class, I don't know, not, I don't know, it just felt like that. And and because I wanted to do compose, I knew I wanted to do like composing and stuff, and I took music classes to learn, and I improved. And even though like I didn't get like in oral skills, I didn't get like a really good grade, but it's just I just take courses to learn. I wasn't really going for a degree, um, not really to like do that. It's just more just to learn. Um, so like I'd like to go get a degree someday, like if I could. But right now it's just kind of like a lot of things always feel kind of impractical whenever I try to go about it. So I just kind of take classes when I can just to improve my craft. And it can be hard when in the system of it, a degree and best grades, and it's just hard. Like in class setting for me, it's just under pressure. I have a hard time, and but I use the information in the class, like my oral skills class. I used it in my composition, so like it's helped me a lot. But even though I struggle with oral skills, the theory class was more my field. Like I have more music theory, so um, I was I use a lot of general music theory to compose what I want. And after I finished my courses, I tried to study on my own different avenues of music theory, like studying Fuchs's counterpoint book, and I liked studying old theories books, and I learned what Mendelssohn used to study as a kid, and those are very interesting books, and kind of more just self learning. And but I do remember in my oral skills class, the like at the time, I was kind of still all in my worry and all this stuff, like what am I going to do musically, and I remember the professor asked us where we see ourselves in 5 years, and um and at the time I was like, well, a music tea shop sounds nice, have own a tea shop and play music in it when I want. But little did I know that within the next 5 years, I'd start writing my own books, make a way to include my music in my projects, move abroad to Vienna and Leipzig, and visit the Mendelssohn House whenever I wanted, and then join a local orchestra. And then we played in the Gewandhaus and and then I attended as a guest. I wasn't a full student, but I attended as a guest listener to the school Mendelssohn started in Leipzig. So I did take some music courses later on in my travel. Uh, but as a guest listener, so just kind of more self learning, and then I go to Fingal's Cave and in Scotland and stuff. So doing all this stuff, and then now I'm at the point where I'm back at home, and I do have work playing guitar at uh, retirement home. So I'm very happy with that, and I do miss Europe. I wish to go back, but for now I'm pretty happy with my self employment. And so I guess as advice to my 20-year-old self, also, and others like determined to do creative endeavors. So kind of like just advice for people that want to do creative things, is to keep learning your craft as much as you can, even if you struggle at it and you don't know where because you don't know where your ideas will lead you. And even if it seems crazy, if I told my 20-year-old self I'd be doing all the stuff I've done so far, I would say I was crazy. So it's just keep going, and you don't know where you'll end up. And I don't know where I'll end up in the next 5 years, but right now I'm just kind of like, I'm happy. But yeah, so it's basically just anyone doing creative stuff, just keep going.
I agree. I agree. And a little bonus question. This was not on my list, but I just
Oh
thought of
no,
this just
I'm
now. So
kidding.
if that's okay, no, it's a fun
No,
one.
it should be fine.
Would you ever want to compose for, say, like a period piece, like film or TV show or something? Like if you were
Um,
given the chance to to compose an original score for something set in either the 1700s or
I
the
think that would be
1800s,
really cool.
you know.
I think it would be doable because it would be like, I mean, I can do projects here in a minute. I gotta plug in my computer real quick.
All good.
Um, Sometimes my computer just dies.
Oh no, that's not good.
Anyway, so let's wait a minute. Um, huh, see if it'll. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so I think it would be a really interesting to do that because the way, for me, creative wise, the way I do projects is I kind of have to. It has to be a project that is kind of compatible with me because if it's just like a project like out of the blue, like if it's just compose a piece for this random movie, I'll have a hard time because I'll be like, I don't know, like it's just kind of a broad idea. But then if it's like I do have one of my guitar pieces, there's a local filmmakers in Iowa and they listened to one of my guitar pieces and they're using that for a local film.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
so it's more like, I guess the way I create, it's more I create stuff and if you want to use it, that's already there. I mean, that's the best way for me because it's
I
already
got ya.
there
I got
in
ya.
what you need. But if it was like a movie that was like a period piece, that might fit better because it's something specific and it's kind of in the realm of the realm of music that I like to compose. So then it probably would fit better or go
Right.
better
Right. No, I was just
finishing
curious.
wise.
I was just curious because you said you do Baroque. You do all the classical eras of music, and was wondering like, have you ever been approached, or if you had the chance, because
Yeah.
that it sounds like it could be up your alley.
Yeah, part of it is like with the orchestra music. I'm trying to work on a symphony, and part of it is I don't always know if it. I've never had like a symphony work of mine performed by like an orchestra before, so it's like I don't know if all the nitpicky things if they really work or what actually works. Like for guitar, I know it works because I play guitar, but I mean I study music theory the best I can. It's still my own thing, and it's still not like like the deep music theory stuff where it's like don't double sevenths and all this for if you want it to be a period piece and
Right.
like when it gets that specific, I mean I try to follow it, but I'm not like perfect at it. So it's still like if you're looking for the like perfect period piece, it might not turn out to be like specifically like that,
Right.
uh, but yeah. So but it would still be interesting.
No, definitely, and I hope something like that happens for you because you're talented and you deserve it. You deserve a lot of good things. And with that, we have come to our end. I thank you. I thank you so much for joining me. And if you'd like to plug your social media, if you have a website, or just the general places where people can find your books as well as more from you, that would be incredible. And I will thank you once more for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. This was really cool, and thanks.
Absolutely. Um, do you have social medias where people can like follow
Oh,
your stuff? Yeah.
um, okay. So I am T T and guitars on Instagram, and on YouTube. Those are my two main. So it's like tea, like drinking tea, and guitars.
Yeah, and I'll plug them below. I
Okay.
promise. I just it's sometimes I know that I interview actors and stuff, and they are required to have social media for their
Oh yeah,
presence.
yeah. So yeah, and I can send you that stuff too if you need it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and with that, I have been Faith Jacobs, your host, signing off.